What do you think of political parties, particularly opposition parties, that constantly complain about the housing crisis and they make a big deal out of it, but then when it comes to kind of local votes on housing developments, they tend to object to them quite a bit? I'm thinking of parties like Sinn Féin and People Before Profit that are sort of almost serial housing objectors. Do you think there's something that needs to change there specifically?
Well, it does, but it needs to change soon. I mean, bringing forward a planning and development bill that has been in front of the Oireachtas committee, the housing committee now for a number of months. All of the contributors have said this bill will make it worse, not better. It's 700 pages in depth. It's not for the faint-hearted. Where it may cure some issues, it most certainly will make the planning process more arduous and probably cause actually more delays than we're seeing at the moment, which clearly isn't helpful. That's for the long term. In the short term, we need to tackle the issue of viability. Where we were building apartments in Dublin, which by the way is about the only place they're suited, high-rise apartments in Dublin or city centres, we no longer have a funding stream for that. The event of interest rates has ensured that the cuckoo funds no longer have an interest in building large apartment blocks. So we have to address those issues, and that is not by way of saying government have carte blanche, are allowed to use and squander taxpayers' money. There are solutions out there. They've been given the solutions, and Sinn Féin don't want to hear them either. Viability is the issue that needs to be addressed. Our planning in relation to how it's more expensive to build apartments. Like for instance in Wexford, we don't need apartments. We can build one floor, one bed apartments. You know, we can build them on the flat where people have front and back gardens and a quality of life. That's what we have land for, and that's the usage we should be making of it. We shouldn't be trying to corral people into high-rise buildings where nobody can afford to buy the apartment, and you're ending up subsequently with only housing bodies or social housing bought by the council, and your objective of where we have a mix of people has gone out the window, and it's all to do with the cost of building those, building our houses. We can build 3-bed houses much cheaper than we can actually build apartments. For instance, in Wexford today, it would cost you about €245,000 to build a 2-bed apartment. A 3-bed house will cost you, with site, or 2-bed house I should say, will probably cost you somewhere in the region of 50,000 less. And that's the issue. Front and back gardens, space to live. We do not want to be going backwards, which as far as I can see with planning and the evidence is there, backwards is where we're at.
Is a lot of this just because of the green lobby trying to sort of engineer particular types of housing that, if everybody's living closer together, then you don't have to drive as far, and so there's an environmental component to that? Do you think it's basically a climate issue, that the fact that the local authorities want to make housing this way as opposed to that way?
Well, I think what you have is a planning policy put forward for the past 10 years or so for a 15-minute city by somebody who is effectively an ogre in the Customs House, and he's been there now, and now he's moved into the position of planning regulator, trying to enforce the policies he's developed, which is exactly that, corralling people into high-rise living. It just doesn't work. People in Wexford certainly don't want it where I'm elected. They want front and back gardens. We have the space for front and back gardens. There is nothing to say that you can't. 67% of Wexford people live in rural Ireland, and they should be allowed to continue to live and build their houses in rural Ireland to support our rural communities, our shops, our clubs like our GAA clubs, our soccer clubs. We have doctors, nurses, teachers, shopkeepers, priests, you name it. We have them all living in the country, but they're finding it very difficult for their family and the next generation to be able to live there as well, which ultimately is going to erode rural Ireland. That has to stop and it has to change.